Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Thank you for tuning in to a very special presentation presented by The Block. I am the Block Director of News, Frank Chaparro, and I am joined by two very special presenters today. We have Sam Sutch, the CTO of Blockset and BRD, and Rebecca Aspler, who joins us from Unbound. We are going to be diving into well, there's an Amber Alert that I'm getting, so let me just turn that off. Sorry about that. We are going to be diving into some topics pertaining to digital asset data and infrastructure. This is my second time to bat, so I'm very excited. Um, we're going to start off with Rebecca, who's going to dig into some issues related to security, what companies across the blockchain and digital asset space are thinking about, are concerned about when it comes to security, and how they're trying to improve their existing systems, possibly with blockchain technology. And then we will be looking at scalability, very important question and topic in the space, something that has long hung over the space as an issue and something that we've looked at different mechanisms and solutions to address, whether that's public blockchains or private blockchains. Scalability has always been an important issue. Can we put something on a blockchain or move a system over to a blockchain um, and then do so in a way that is scalable to the same extent, even if it's more efficient from a cost perspective or a technology perspective? And then we're going to join those two topics together and have a nice little panel like conversation. So, thank you so much for tuning in. We're excited to present on this topic today. And I will, without further ado, kick things over to Rebecca, who will start her presentation.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Sam, for joining today. And thank you for the audience for taking the time to join this webinar. I think both Sam and I have very much tried to bring in data today and viewpoints that would add value to the audience. So much, I would say, not prioritizing or not promoting the companies. I do excuse me for the dog in the background, which is pretty much disturbed. So we're trying to have you, I would say, maybe educate yourselves upon things that we've learned. We've learned our lessons, I would say, during the last few years, and we want to save you some time and some pain. So, but just before diving into that, very briefly, I'm from Unbound. My name is Rebecca Aspler. I'm Director of Product Management for the blockchain product line. We're doing crypto assets of all types, including, I would say, oh, sorry, I lost the slides. Could be money related assets, but could be also supply chain type of assets, identity type of assets, anything blockchain for that matter under this product line. Unbound has been around since 2014 or 2015. It has been established by Professor Yuda Lindell and Professor Nigel Smart. Both are very known worldwide cryptographers. And they were able to establish the company as a business company after being in the academia for over 30 years, I think, or 60 if you count them both together, doing mathematics and cryptography for that matter. This is their specialty. And a breakthrough in one of the protocols helped them take MPC, multi-party computation, from minutes-long computing into milliseconds time computing, therefore making it a reality for businesses to use. So Unbound has today up to 9 granted patents and still 10 pending. So we're very much, I would say, IP-oriented type of company. We're deployed with 500 Fortune type of companies. We're an enterprise grade and targeting enterprises with our products. Very proud to be covered by Gartner in several hype cycles, actually 5 of them, and also be considered by Gartner as a cool vendor. Worth mentioning that we have FIPS level 2 type of certification. We're probably the only software, MPC software in the world to have such. So we're very proud of that. And this is also a testimonial, I would say, to how much the security community is checking our technology and certifying it and verifying that it is of value indeed and secure enough. Sam, would you like to present yourself before we dive into?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Samuel Sutch. I'm the CTO at BRD, one of their longest employees and the creator of Blockset. Just want to thank everyone for being here. And yeah, I'll let you go ahead, Rebecca. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So diving in. So why keys are very much important. I know everybody is talking about market conditions and the recession and the COVID-19 and stuff like that, but it is important just, to dwell just a few, I would say, seconds even on why blockchain keys are very important. With blockchain, as you probably know, the keys are the assets. If one steals the key, the key is lost, but not only the key, but the asset itself. But uniquely, stealing the key is not, the thing that you have to do. The only thing you have to do is actually use the key. You can see it, use it once, and therefore be able to steal money. So unlike with fiat money, where there are do-overs with mechanisms such as SWIFT, with blockchain, there are no do-overs, which is really cool in the sense that you get one verifiable blockchain, but when you have to recover funds or money, you cannot do so. And therefore the criticality of why keys are important. So how does MPC solves that? Regardless of Unbound, MPC is a computing technology, not technology, mathematics algorithm that can jointly compute an algorithm of a function, keeping their inputs private, meaning knowledge, zero knowledge proof, sorry. The ability of such multiple machine jointly computing something together enables Unbound and other MPC companies to shred the key into several key shards and have each party hold such a shard on its own. Therefore, the key does not exist as one piece ever, not a generation, not as usage, not with backup keys, etc. This is a very, I would say, different in type of advancement compared to other old technologies, let's say HSMs for that matter, that have the key in its full matter, in its full entity, and are pretty much busy protecting that key, not from usage, but from stealing. Unbound MPC, very briefly, probably the only promoting stuff today is the multi-party computation as opposed to other multi-party computation type of companies, which are doing actually two-party MPC and not multi-party MPC. As you can see here, there are 5 parties in this diagram. So this is a platform that we're using. As you can see, it has N key shares that could be used. It's crypto agile like any MPC. You don't have to ship machines anywhere if something is upgraded or an algorithm has been changed. It's a distributed policy validation in the case of Unbound. You can have hot vaults and cold vaults. You can have a group of admins because of this multi-party computation type of key shredding, etc. So ecosystem, this is where I hope I'm beginning to add value as to what could be found out there. So with blockchain, what we see at Unbound when serving customers is actually this area, I would say, of use cases that we're seeing. Now, the majority of money is still held by public blockchains, the Bitcoins and the Ethereum and the ERC20 type of tokens, as you can see, probably holding, I would say, 80% of the market volume-wise and value-wise. But it's interesting, very interesting to see enterprises getting into blockchain, doing all their, I would say, even under the hood kind of use cases, proof of concepts, going into production these days. And we see, for example, with banks, without mentioning the specific names, very much with every bank that we talk to, and certainly banks that are doing blockchain, they're doing clearing and settlement of fiat assets classes behind the scenes. Could be bonds, could be derivatives, futures, just as an example. So they're clearing and settling such assets behind the scenes using blockchain, and actually saving a lot of time and a lot of human errors because in the past, dozens of people within each department, within each type of asset class, fiat asset class, had to do these verifications manually on paper even, and only then put them up on a joint database and have this distributed database between several companies, or even being sent forms from one company to another. So this is a classic use case that could be very much improved by blockchain and is being done so with banks. One can imagine, of course, that as soon as banks are allowed by the regulator to deal with Bitcoin and Ethereum, just as an example, they would simply use the same infrastructure to start trading or safeguarding as custody the type of assets that the regulator would approve them, because the infrastructure is already there, already in production. We also see enterprise blockchain type of use cases, let's say supply chain. Everyone knows IBM and their cooperation with, I think, 25 already ports in the world. So they're moving around, I would say, and revolutionizing the supply chain arena. There are several insurance companies and banks that are working with credit card and credit companies to have the identity management piece being cleared. And you can see all, I would say, the infrastructure below could be Hyperledger, Quorum, R3 Corda, Axoni. These are the most common type of infrastructure that we're seeing. Now, tools-wise or technologies-wise, we're seeing 4 types of them. So we're seeing most commonly HSMs, as one would guess. These are already there in enterprises. There's a giant, I would say, ecosystems around there. It's a hardware security module that is designed to protect keys within. They're actually tamper-proof in the sense that one could, if these are level 3 or level 4, they would even bring themselves on fire if something happens. These are very common, very much known, and very much trusted by the industry. There are, of course, the multi-sig type of technologies, which we're all very much aware of. Their limitation, by the way, is that the fact that they're usually limited to 2 out of 3, and they're ledger specific. So one can imagine, I would say, the constraints of supporting proof of stake type of assets, just as an example. There are, of course, trusted execution environments that we see as another layer of security. Even though with this, I'm saying that we're seeing less and less of them, because specifically SGX has been exposed to side channel attacks. So we are seeing those, but as another layer of security and not on their own. And of course, MPC, regardless of Unbound, there are several vendors out there already that are doing MPC, multi-party computation. And even Gartner says that MPC would be used by at least 50% of the organizations, let's say 5 years ahead. So it's gaining momentum. Another way to look at this matrix of security tools is not by the technology, but the type of solution. And here you can see 3 types of solutions. It could be either a homegrown kind of do-it-yourself type of solution. Usually we see them with enterprises being, I would say, leveraged by consulting companies such as Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, who's our partner. So they're experts in consulting, in services, and servicing enterprises. They're bringing the expertise of how to do things, and they're bringing, I would say, the technology expertise. And the technologies themselves are probably in-house already there as HSMs, or being brought from the outside. Could be MPC, could be multi-sig, whatever it is. And organizations are putting a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of effort in building those do-it-yourself kind of solutions. There are, of course, the security as a service type of providers out there. So many, as you know, BitGo as an example, Curve as an example, quite a lot of them outside. And of course, security platforms, pretty much like Unbound is, in the sense of building a specifically expertise in security for that matter, and selling it as a solution for the organization itself. Now, I'm going to run through these slides because we do want to leave some time for the panel that's supposed to be interesting conversation, but I will have very much, I would say, briefly just talk about the headlines and the categories. I think you are all getting the slides later on, so you may want to maybe approach later on offline for additional questions. I have compared some of, I would say, either the technologies or the solution types, in this example, do-it-yourself versus SaaS, using different types of categories. So in this category, it's the effort that is associated with satisfying an enterprise type of customer. It is worth saying that because enterprise-grade customers are not the SMBs and certainly not the private retail investors. They're looking for other types of, I would say, criteria to satisfy their customers. They are very much monitored by the regulator, so they cannot lose their license. Just as an example, they need insurance, so they have to be in close contact with the insurers. So you can see the different parameters, for example, Open API, because they have many other systems. They need to be or need to support various types of ledgers because they have various types of customers. Same for the platform. They're very much concerned about various types of security attacks. Banks, as an example, are a great attack vector, attack target for many, I would say, busy and thirsty hackers. So you need to create a very sophisticated type of architecture that would protect against these types of hackers, these professional ones. You need to create a secure backup that is enterprise grade, that is secure, that is shredded in some way, that no one can restore assets on their own. You have to have an admin group for that matter. Just as an example, role-based access. I think all of us have signed checks of some sort of that were later approved by other people within the company. So it's not just me approving my own funds withdrawal. You have to have a flow chart of people are doing that. And other parameters, as you can see, moving on just for the sake of time. There's also the effort that is associated with cryptographically enforced policy controls. As mentioned before, enterprises have these massively complicated, sophisticated policies that they must adhere to by license. They cannot jeopardize their license. For example, segregation of authorities. They must have several people of several authorities in different locations signing the same transaction. They are required to do so by the regulation. They cannot skip that even if they want to. And therefore, they must have, just as an example, risk-based cryptographically validated policies. They must be able to prove that someone has indeed signed a transaction. They must, as an example, replace approvers every quarter, just as an example. So you have to have an easy way to replace approvers, to suspend one, to revoke one. This is not the retail type of solution that one could think of. And even the refreshing of keys, because if you have the same static key at the end of the day, someone would get a hold of it. Running ahead, effort associated with, oh, this is the wrong headline. But the headline should have been here, the use cases, versatility. As we all know, blockchain is a very dynamic type of market. So we started off with trading, we moved on to custody, and now we're starting to talk about proof of stake type of assets and certainly tokenization of assets. And the fact that the old solutions or the solutions that are out there technology-wise, whether HSMs or multisig, we have customers that have come to us after requesting from their current vendor to support either proof of stakes type of assets or the tokenization of assets. And these vendors have said to them, oh, we're going to do that, but it's going to take us half a year or even more, and the market's simply moving ahead. So with MPC, regardless of Unbound or any other MPC, crypto agility is embedded into the fact that it's a software-based solution and the fact that it's a multi-party type of computation solution. So the fact that it's a new market and a dynamic market is not limited by MPC as a security solution. And I think, again, this is the wrong headline. This is regarding the end users that need to have, as you can see, I'm not going to jump into the specific matter for that, but AAL3 type of authentication that is cryptographically validated using hard cryptography, public key information. You want to have for the end user seamless and passwordless type of experience. You do not want them to move around with hardware tokens. This is 2020. People are not very much keen on going around with hardware tokens, even though there are companies that this is their specialty. And you want the operations people, at the end of the day, those accountants to be feeling comfortable with the software that you're giving them, even though it's blockchain and cool. At the end of the day, it should be very convenient for them to work with, to monitor the workflows, the approvals, the reporting that they have to get to the regulator, etc. I think that this is the last slide, if I'm not mistaken, but just to summarize, I think that you'll be getting the slides. But the overall notion should be, this is not a retail type of solution. If you're a business, if you're a large business, if you're an enterprise type of business, you need to make sure that your assets are not only protected security-wise, they should be managed in a scalable manner, as Sam would shortly go into. But you should also think of the regulator, you should think of your business customers, you should think of your license and what it requires out of you when you choose a security platform. Sam, on to you.
I'm gonna step in just for a second,
Yeah.
Rebecca. I appreciate the outline. One thing that you mentioned that I find particularly interesting is the development of these new settlement and trading services for large enterprises. I think the past few years we've seen a lot of different solutions come to market. You mentioned Axoni, which has an equity swap platform, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's a multi-trillion-dollar market that they're
Absolutely.
trying to upend. You also have Paxos, which has its own settlement platform, but both of these are almost in the pilot stage, right? Axoni was a small equity swap between Citigroup and Goldman Sachs. You had several other investment banks and investors sitting in the sidelines, so to speak. And then Paxos is limited to 100,000 trades a day in that pilot, right? And they're both doing something similar, right? We're trying to ease the process of trading. We are trying to take T+2 to instant in the case of Axoni. We are trying to, reduce the processes until a swap comes to maturity, right? So these are two
Absolutely.
very inundated processes that are well known and griped about on Wall Street. But I'd like to get a sense of the progress of both of those pilots, and maybe not specifically, but in your work and talking with different clients across the industry, when it comes to trading and settlement, and some of these platforms like Axoni and Paxos's new platform, right now in this early nascent stage where it's limited in the number of trades, it's limited to the degree by which it can scale, what are some of the questions, the security questions, the issues they're running into? Is it too soon to tell? And what are the impediments right now to building some of these platforms out?
No, thank you. This is a great question. Actually, our
Why
next
they pay me the big bucks?
Actually, really a great question, because right now our next quarterly release is actually, again, without mentioning which one, but serving one of these customers. We're actually adding what we call a custom policy type of feature, because they need to support behind the scenes derivative type of policies. So it is not just a regular spot kind of deal, buy, just as an example, dollars, sell Bitcoins. They have to work around, I would say, future type of deals in this example, or equity swaps type of deal, and they have to secure the exact transaction. Let's say if on a certain date a price would be touching a certain point, then initiate a transaction and have it signed by a certain group if this is by this amount, and another group if this is crossing a certain amount. So this type of sophistication must be secured, otherwise it would be like any spot type of deal. So it's really challenging. I'm very grateful for the fact that it can be done using MPC. Otherwise, honestly, I don't know how you protect these.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but we're getting these in.
So are more firms that thought that they could easily rebuild, replicate what we see in capital markets using blockchain? Is your point that they're starting to come to terms with the fact that they also need to leverage MPC in maintaining the security of these new systems?
Yes, we're seeing them. This is also great, because we're seeing actually two layers of, I would say, ways of approaching this challenge. One is the fact that they're acknowledging the fact that blockchain is there to stay. They're mirroring the fiat market, for that matter. And therefore, they're adding MPC above additional, let's say, cold type of wallets, because cold wallets are required by the regulator. They're still ensuring that. But they need MPC because of its flexibility and the fact that you can share the keys to end parties. So we see the mirroring, we see the same asset classes, we see the same type of deals, and we see MPC as gaining more and more momentum as another layer of security.
When you add that additional layer of security, Rebecca, are there additional regulatory questions or
Oh, yes.
additional regulatory requirements in putting that layer on top?
We're doing, not just us, but we're very busy with the various regulators around the world, convincing them that MPC is as secure, at least as secure as cold wallets. So we're in discussions with the Japanese FSA. We're talking with Wyoming, because their new regulation is spreading the world all around. So we're in conversations. We're in Germany in various talks. So we're all around, not just us. There's also an MPC alliance because it is a new technology, not the mathematics, but the technology, the application part of it. So it has to be, I would say, communicated to the various regulators. It's a process. We're very much respectful of the fact that it will take time. And fortunate enough, the market is understanding that slowly but surely.
Well, I mean, it's really a chasm. I mean, it is a
Yeah.
quantum leap from the way that the back office, at least on Wall Street, has largely stayed the same. We've seen innovation in
Yeah.
trade execution, but the back office is running on mainframes, code bases, and complex systems that are really out of line or not in step with the current technology that we have. I'd
You're
be
so
curious.
right. Yeah.
I know. Thank you. Now, I'd be curious to know though, where else are we seeing, um, you know, infrastructure that is maybe out of date that can leverage
Oh,
some of these new technologies? We were talking about, I think, during the preparatory conversations that we had ahead of the panel about maybe some use cases in gaming. Where else outside of Wall Street? Because I feel like we're always so Wall Street centric, but there are these
yeah.
other opportunities.
So actually, two very interesting use cases. One is the supply chain. IBM is known for its very strategic deal with Maersk and dozens of ports around the world. And I've actually seen in my own eyes the old kind of statements that you go to release like a container, a physical container, not a technical container from the port. And they're actually using a paper, and you cannot release the container unless you actually bring this piece of paper from one station to the other. And only once another human got this piece of paper, they're able to release the container. So with blockchain, they're getting this proof all around the world on the same blockchain in a matter of seconds or minutes at the most. So this is really revolutionary. You can imagine, you cannot imagine such a use case going into production without blockchain, because this is not a distributed type of database. You have to have multiple companies. And another very interesting use case, which I really cannot disclose the names of the involved, I would say, parties, is identity management. We are in discussions with formal authorities around using electronic IDs, let's say license IDs. In the United States, you have these IDs of, I would say, tribal IDs. Yet you're working with, in colleges, you have IDs. So just imagine all of these being authenticated using MPC and being managed using blockchain. So when you cross cities, when you cross countries, and I'm not even talking about the passports, you're actually using MPC to authenticate yourself into a system to validate your identity.
So
And
how does
then
that work? What does that look like for me? I have this new fancy MPC validating identification
yeah.
card. What does that look like?
So let's say you want, just as an example, you want to prove that you took a certain course in a college. So, and you're being interviewed to a new employer. And very interestingly, you do not want to show this person that you had this list, I would say, of very interesting courses, just the 5 that are of matter to this specific employer. So you create what they call a claim for that matter with Hyperledger Indy. Sorry, not getting into the details right now. We don't have the time. But you're actually exposing to that employer the fact that you have taken these 5 courses. You create like a claim and you say, please get the way to identify myself, that I have taken these specific 5 courses. This is my grade, and that's it. So this is the claim that you're building, the identity claim. And the verifier has the public key to verify the specific identity claim that you've just created for this person or interviewer. Same for passports, is a more complicated type of scenario, but tribal identities, ID cards, social securities type of thing. This is really complicated in the sense that it would probably take the longest to implement that. It's I would say, more hacker prone, but the pilots are there. The pilots are going on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what's the timeline on something like that getting into production?
Oh, I don't know. So much
That's
politics
anybody's guess.
around. I would assume a certain, let's say, county and getting into this within 1 year, 2 years at the most. Federation wise, I don't know, 10 years. It takes time. This is the really revolutionary stuff. I think that my kids would probably enjoy that, not me.
Yeah, we shall see. Well, we want to give Sam some time in the spotlight, so we'll draw him into the conversation. What's so fascinating about this conversation so far is that we are taking the opportunity to examine some of the use cases and ways in which this technology can remedy problems across different industries, and gleaning from the anecdotes of certain clients that BRD and Unbound share. So we're going to move on to scalability for a few moments. Sam, take it away.
All right, thanks, Frank. Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, so just to remind everyone, I'm Samuel Sutch. I'm the CTO at BRD. I'm going to take just a few minutes to talk about scaling, because we kind of see security and scaling as being two problems that need solved in order to bring, blockchain solutions to the masses. So, yeah. So before we get into sort of the meat of this, I think it's important to understand exactly what we're talking about. So when we say blockchain applications, we're talking about any application that uses a blockchain in its overall architecture. So this could be what we're all probably pretty familiar with, like decentralized finance, wallets, exchanges, smart contracts, and so on. But it can also mean, gaming and social network economies. We just saw Reddit actually launch a few tokens. Scaling that is not an easy problem. Enterprise collaboration, like the consortiums. And then, of course, there's kind of the back office stuff that needs to be considered as well, like auditing, compliance, forensics. And then when we talk about scaling these applications on the blockchain, really it's sort of, the art of responding, and I call it an art because there's no exact science here, but the art of responding to changing demand for your product, hopefully increase demand, but demand changes throughout the week, throughout the month. And so we need to be able to respond to that. So in the context of products that incorporate blockchains, we're really talking about two different things. One is a discussion that we're all very familiar with, which is just how scalable is the blockchain itself. This means how many transactions can that blockchain process, and we call that kind of the write workload. There's been a lot said, and there's a lot of competition in this space to create the ultimate general purpose blockchain. But for now, let's assume that for most projects, a decision will be made to choose a blockchain that suits the use case of that project. And there's many great blockchains out there. And increasingly, a lot of projects actually incorporate multiple chains. Oops, sorry. However, what goes undiscussed, often until way too late, is the read workload. So this is what your application is actually doing most of the time when it's running. It's rendering user interfaces, showing objects that represent either directly or indirectly data from the blockchain. In modern non-blockchain web applications, we take this kind of workload for granted most of the time. And for non-blockchain applications, it's common to just set up a cluster of servers in the cloud in AWS somewhere, use a cloud hosted database, and just apply just common, well understood techniques of caching, load distribution, and so on. However, for blockchain applications, the techniques and strategies can actually be a lot different. So a common rule to sort of think of and apply when developing most applications is the 90-10 rule, which is that 90% of the work that your application is doing is reading data, and the other 10% is writing data. And we're kind of here to talk about that 90%. So existing solutions can be summarized primarily in two categories. And the first that we're going to talk about, and where most teams start out, is to interface directly with the node software of their protocol of choice. So they'll download the node software onto a server, they'll sync it against the network, and they'll start running their workloads and their requests against it. And this can work just great for early teams. And it can work good for these chains, some private chains and other nascent chains that have yet to gain a lot of adoption. But if you're developing an application for Bitcoin or Ethereum or Ripple, for instance, as I think most people are probably well aware, the data set is massive. These chains have been used for a while. They have billions of transactions on them. And just this initial setup operation where you just are getting the software on your machine to run requests against it can take months. It has to sync all of the blockchain data onto the machine that it's running. It can take months. And depending on your access to resources like bandwidth and compute, it could just never finish. Not to mention that if you're actually intending on taking this to production, every piece of software that you add to your infrastructure adds just a combinatorial complexity and cost to your operations. Now, fortunately, vendors exist which will host nodes on your behalf. But as you can imagine, this can be quite expensive. Nodes aren't like web servers. They're much more complex. They're like much more complex databases. Each instance of these nodes carries its own entire data set for the entire blockchain typically. And they require a lot of attention and experience to manage correctly. And that comes with a cost. Also, node host vendors can't typically share load across many tenants because node software just doesn't scale like web servers. And high scale typically is not possible using only nodes. Most node software in our experience at BRD can only support a few concurrent active users at any given time. So the second category, and where most teams eventually land once they start taking a product to market, is block explorers. Block explorers are software that reduce costs and increase scalability in several ways. So first, a block explorer extracts data from the node and mirrors it to a database. It indexes it in a database. Read workloads, which remember are the most common, go directly to that database, and write operations go directly to the node software. So this is a really important optimization because it allows vendors to scale read workloads much more like they would in a traditional networked or web application. So traditional web servers in this case and databases can be used to accommodate increased demand. And this is a win-win for customers of block explorers because it results in lower cost and more scaling headroom. And it does sound like a magic bullet, and conceptually, this is the right way to think about scaling blockchain applications. Unfortunately, existing solutions are a bit limited in several ways, though this is the correct architecture for high scale. Most block explorer vendors aren't quite prepared for high scale, and for the block explorers tend to be fairly protocol specific. You'll find some that are Bitcoin or Ethereum or Ripple only. and then also not capable of serving common application workloads. There's certain patterns that go into developing applications, and the types of queries that they run need to be taken into consideration when choosing a vendor. So let's look at what requirements, or let's look at what the common requirements are of a team developing a modern blockchain application. So the priority of these items are dependent on your use case. So they don't necessarily come in any particular order. I see them as being all equally important, although you kind of have to make decisions for your own project. So just going through them briefly. So demand elasticity is that the service must be able to scale up, but also scale down with your usage. As you get more users, of course, running your service becomes more expensive. But as you get less users, for instance, on the weekend, the service should get less expensive. Protocol choice is just the ability to choose whatever protocol best suits your use case. For some, this can be all of the protocols. It could be all the public chains, but it could also be just a single private chain like Quorum or what have you. Cost effectiveness. We want to take a look at how these, how your solution, how these services are built. It's my opinion and Blockset's opinion that these services should be built just like any cloud service. You should be paying per unit of work, just like on AWS. Data integrity is not something that can be compromised, so it's always on the list of requirements. You can't ever have a service which just omits part of your data set. High availability is also typically non-negotiable. This just means that the service is always available, and then there's backups and contingency plans that service offers should anything go down. Of course, performance typically not optional as well. Modern applications and modern software users all require high performance interfaces. And then, of course, just integration. How productive are your developers using these tools, and how quickly can they get your product to market? So all of these requirements are something that must be considered when you're choosing a solution for your sort of your blockchain backend. And it goes beyond just what is the node software capable of. So where do we go from here? So as you can probably imagine, I'm here on behalf of Blockset, so I'm going to talk about how Blockset can help satisfy some of these issues, some of these common requirements. So Blockset is a next generation sort of all-in-one data platform for blockchain applications. It was created internally at BRD to meet the demands we had while scaling up our popular wallet applications. As we looked around, and believe me, as a CTO, I tried to find every way possible to not build a whole product like this for our wallet, but nothing in the ecosystem met all of our requirements or even came close. So I'm going to talk a little bit about BRD and how this kind of relates. A key company value of ours is that we strive to financially liberate and empower the individual. And we realized while making Blockset, before it was even called Blockset, that this mission extended well beyond what a single company, our company BRD, could do. BRD is a fantastic wallet, in my opinion, although I may be biased. But there are many other applications that can be built using our technology. Blockset allows us as a company to empower not just individuals, but entrepreneurs, startups, and enterprises alike. Blockset, I see it as a force multiplier in the industry, in the same way that Unbound is, allowing teams to quickly iterate and deliver amazing blockchain products to their customers that otherwise they would never be able to. So I think that is my last slide. You can check out more information on blockset.com if you're interested. With that, I'll pass it back to Frank. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's a corner of the market or corner of being a participant in this market that I've never really paid that much attention to. The complexity and the headaches involved with operating and running various nodes. I guess I want to go back to this question or this idea of the role of vendors in the space, right? And why that price point isn't really coming down for them to manage these nodes on your behalf. What are some of the you mentioned a lot of the headwinds facing vendors, but what are some of the tailwinds? Like, why even be in that business if it's as awful as you're describing?
Do you mean being in the sort of in the hosting business?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the infrastructure business, it's for much the same reasons as AWS sort of started their journey. AWS started as a project inside Amazon so that they could better host images of products on Amazon.com. And their first product was S3. Ours is very similar. We had an internal need, and we sort of realized that other businesses and companies would need it, and we had a way to bring it to market and scale it much more cost effectively, while providing a better product than just a singular purpose hosting product would. The tailwinds there for us are really it enables our company BRD to offer a much better wallet experience. We can onboard new chains faster. We can scale up and also sleep at night a lot easier, knowing that our infrastructure is it's much more, it provides a much more solid base. Scaling and infrastructure has always been sort of a last minute concern of many teams. And it kind of occupies a somewhat thankless position in the industry, but at the end of the day, it's what enables teams to actually go to market with their product, and so it's very important.
As you try to, or as some of these node hosting vendors try to improve the scalability of their platforms to maybe the same degree as a AWS type solution, are there then security type issues that they can run into?
Oh, yeah.
What are some of those issues, and what do they look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, depending on the protocol, hosting your own nodes could be quite dangerous, and especially when we're looking at private chains. Private chains have to be secured with credentials and private keys in much the same way as wallets. So we see a lot of cross-pollination of technologies for node hosts, including not just node hosts, but even ourselves, as we start to offer chains that have staking functionality, requires securing assets and keys on the server that is enabled at this point most easily and cost effectively by Unbound.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to add here that our enterprise grade of customers, because they need by regulation to control the keys and therefore cannot use a SaaS provider for that matter, they start hosting their own nodes and they have to keep at least 2 of each type, managing data integrity. So when you start with Bitcoin, just as an example, and then you move on to other types of assets because your investors, your customers are requiring that. And then you add proof of stake type of nodes. And then you add the private chains because you want to clear and settle other asset classes behind the scenes. You actually become your own AWS, which is a nightmare to manage.
That's interesting. So in many cases, you're going to have companies, they're going to be required to spin out that type of subdivision.
Yes,
How do you support them?
So the hosting of nodes is only one part of the solution. taking a product to market requires, a big collaboration of teams. As Rebecca was saying, if these companies are running nodes internally, especially for private chains, those nodes are only going to be able to provide service to a certain number of clients, and typically they don't support workloads that the application is actually demanding of it. They provide the protocol level cooperation between nodes, between different members of consortiums, and so on. But they're not great at serving like just web traffic. You got a user clicking around on your website. Where do those requests, where's that data served from? So the hybrid solution that we're seeing with private chains is that they are run on by regulatory requirements. Some of those nodes are run within the infrastructure of the entities and businesses themselves, and then that data gets replicated out to a third-party indexer like Blockset, which serves the sort of interactive, application workloads that are required. You're on mute, Frank.
Am I on mute?
Yeah.
Hello?
You're good now.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Remember that old Verizon commercial? Can you hear me now? Or was it Sprint? I don't remember.
That was 1 century ago.
Yeah, it feels like it, right? Back in the early days. So I guess I kind of want to take a step back and ask a more high-level question. We've talked about some of the various use cases involved, or rather some of the various use cases that are, at the forefront of both MPC, blockchain technology, and what some of the issues are in terms of scalability and managing and operating your own nodes, and obviously just grasping and coming to terms with what these technologies mean from a regulatory perspective. But even despite all of that, where are we seeing the biggest demand right now? Where are we the furthest along in terms of a use case or a sector?
We're seeing mostly still the financial services. Financial assets are driving the industry, whether this is the trading of them, the safeguarding of them, or the clearing and settling of them. Still, money makes the world go round, as sad as it may sound.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing as well. That's the today. That's what we're seeing today in the use cases that we're serving a lot today. If you're interested, there's a lot that's tomorrow or very near that we can also talk about.
What's very near?
I alluded to at the top of my presentation, Reddit launching a few tokens. I think we're going to see that become more and more common. Social networks and social gaming is a industry that's already built upon various forms of alternative currency, and I think that a question a couple years.
How does someone like Reddit get around these scalability issues or the issues around running and operating your own nodes? What can they do internally that can advance that, and then where do the vendors step in and help them?
Yeah, I think Reddit. I don't know if you recall a couple of years ago when there was the ERC20 token sort of bonanza. They announced that they were going to build a token. They hired some crypto engineers, and they started work on it. That was a couple of years ago. They quickly discovered a few issues. One, that they didn't quite have an economy that they were creating that they really wanted yet. But two, actually bringing this to their hundreds and hundreds of millions of users was going to take some serious effort. So how did they get there? I don't work at Reddit, so I can't tell you exactly, but I can tell you the technique they used was most likely brute force engineering. where they just went through and figured out one problem at a time. They most likely, similar to these other software companies that are building, blockchain economies like this, had to build a lot of tools internally to manage nodes, manage the state of the data that comes off of the nodes. This is what Blockset is specifically trying to, like that type of pain, that type of 2-year lead time is what Blockset is specifically trying to alleviate, so that companies like Reddit, if they're bringing, if they want to bring a token economy into their social network, are able to do so not just from a prototype and a pilot standpoint, but all the way into production without a 2-year lead time. They can actually experiment on their economy instead of focus on the sort of boring and rote technical aspects of scaling just, the back-end architecture.
That's super interesting. Rebecca, do you have anything to add to that?
Real estate tokens, we're seeing quite a lot of those. I think a few hotel chains, I cannot remember if it's Hilton or another one. I think they just announced a token type of, or tokenized an entire hotel, a new hotel. So this is also very interesting, I think.
Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. It seems we have a few more minutes. Let me just check if we have any audience questions. I think that we are set. I guess any closing thoughts? I mean, if we were to think about what maybe your most unconventional or contrarian position right now in terms of data infrastructure, what would it be?
Sam?
Sure. That's a really interesting question. I think the primary sort of point that is least obvious to people is just that we think about scaling blockchain applications typically in a black box. So we think about scaling what as sort of a thing that you do, but something that is achievable just using AWS, or you can scale up more nodes, you can add more nodes, et cetera. Our experience at BRD is that this is, it's not intuitive, but that approach is not exactly possible. It gets too expensive. In the early days, we tried to create a little bit better wallet experience. Our wallet started life as a decentralized wallet talking directly to Bitcoin nodes. Bitcoin nodes themselves are deprecating the ability for lightweight wallets to do that. So we started spinning up our own nodes, just hoping that we could serve that traffic with what we thought was a reasonable amount of nodes, 15, 20 nodes, which in and of itself became burdensome from a financial perspective pretty quickly. But even then, a single node is able to just do a few users. So yeah, it's counterintuitive. You kind of have to build a second layer in order to actually scale a typical application, and then just leave the blockchain layer to do what it's good at, which is consensus and the mining or the staking. The nodes are great at that. The layer 2 is what kind of enables the next step.
Understood. Rebecca?
Just the devil is in the details. If you're building now a solution, if you're considering buying one or partnering with one, maybe just take Sam's slides, my slides, build your own RFP, understand the details of what you need in order to make a good business, serve your customers in an honest way, and then go out and do the shopping of what infrastructure you need. We think you might find out that the soonest that you start playing this B2B kind of game, it's another level of expertise.
One that is definitely above my pay grade, so I won't have to worry about that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you.
And we hope to do more of these soon. So if you have any ideas or thoughts on the webinars, suggestions. We tried to shake it up a little bit this time with a different type of layout, kind of having two mini presentations, if you will, where I kind of came in and then asked a few questions, but open to exploring new ways to dive in and dissect this very interesting market. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Frank, for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rebecca.
Cheers.
Take care.